Most people argue that if anything changed a lot in the past 50 years, it must be the climate.
Humans are to blame. Climate change is here, it is terrifying, and it is just the beginning. The air is unbreathable, the heat is unbearable, the evidence is everywhere. Humanity has unleashed destruction.
I don't want you to be hopeful. I want you to panic. I want you to feel the fear I feel every day. And then I want you to act.
The notion that the climate has significantly changed is questionable. Although something that in comparison actually did change a lot is the way we communicate. In the following 10 minutes, I will unveil the deceptions woven around the climate movement and shed light on the fraudulent practices and manipulations orchestrated by multinational corporations and governments. Through this, my ultimate goal is to present you the truth you deserve. Mainstream media claims that the Earth is warming at a faster rate than usual due to our fossil fuel consumption. We're told that coal, gas and nuclear energy emit enormous amounts of CO2, which causes the planet's temperature to rise. The projections indicate a 3 degrees Celsius increase by the year 2100, leading to severe consequences in the very near future.
We need to come off fossil fuels. It's an issue that's going to impact you, it's going to impact me.
It's always sustainable energy, renewable energy.
A new industrial revolution, powered by millions of sustainable innovations, is essential. We will all share in the benefits. Affordable clean energy.
Even though these green energy solutions sound very promising, it turns out that climate activists don't exactly know what they're talking about. Let's dive into the specific details of renewable energy. 55% of all windmills like these are produced in China, making a massive footprint with its production, transportation, installation and demolition, costing an average of $4 million each, contributing to an $80 billion business. Solar farms require 75 times more land than our current energy solutions. And if you think that's a lot, wind farms require 360 times more land. Right now, only 0.5% of the American land is taken up to provide the entirety of America with energy using coal, gas and nuclear. If we were to fully replace the entire power grid with renewable green energy, 25% of the land would be filled up with solar panels and windmills, destroying a substantial amount of its biodiversity. And it gets worse. Solar panels and wind turbines don't last forever and come with a lot of waste. Whereas nuclear waste is safely stored and doesn't take up that much space, we simply bury the 7,000 kilogram blades made of glass fiber reinforced plastics in the ground with no new purpose. When you actually count all the production and transportation costs, unnecessary waste and land usage, these so-called green solutions aren't better or even slightly better. They don't average out, but are severely worse than nuclear energy. So what's the reason why there's such a high demand for these so-called solutions? Well, you cannot sell green energy without a climate crisis. But luckily for the investors, people like to spread negativity. That is a fact. Humans love drama. And for the last 30 years, we've been able to talk with the entire world in seconds. As a result, people end up in fear. And fear sells.
I'm very afraid for my future. I think I cannot live here anymore.
We're doubting our panic.
And if it gets hotter and hotter, then it's too late. When the water's boiling, everybody is fucked.
So that scares me.
I don't have the solution for this problem.
The result is that we're now dealing with an indoctrinated group of climate activists alarming the world about extreme weather conditions because of our pollution, and that we must act now before it's too late. But floods and fires have been happening for eons. The fact that we now have instant global communication, making us more aware about problems at the other side of the globe, doesn't mean we didn't have those problems 100 years ago. We simply didn't know about them. Despite the wealth of information available to our endlessly curious species, we are humbled by our lack of simple, fundamental understanding about Earth's soil and oceans, which once again proves how little we know. So the odds of humanity misunderstanding each other and the planet in the first 20 years of instant global connection are obviously a lot higher than the chance of us accurately predicting what the temperature of the Earth will be in the far future. It's very easy to take every problem we have and tying it to climate change. But what if I'm ignorant about the obvious evidence of human-made climate crisis? Well, scientists are claiming to have reliable data of the Earth. But we've only studied climate change for the last 50 years. It's impossible to accurately measure what happened 100, 200, and leave alone 10,000 years ago. Carbon killing the planet is no more than speculation based on this scary chart that dates back 800,000 years, while we've only started measuring CO2 since 1958, exactly where the spike in the chart starts. Think for a second. We don't have the slightest idea of what's going to happen with the temperature of the Earth and how much of an influence humans have on the actual climate. Any scientist telling you a glass ball prediction about the state of the climate of the future is delusional. In 2017, we failed to predict the course of a tornado 2 days in advance with the best weather predicting technology available. To think you know what's going to happen to this breeding, fluctuating and unpredictable planet, which we know very little about, leave alone the sun, you have to be very arrogant and selfish. Predicting the climate isn't science, it's science fiction. And you might be wondering, if all of this is one big circus and it's so obvious, why is everyone cooperating and why is there so much money involved? One simple answer: ESG. ESG is a criteria policy that measures companies in their environmental, social and governance concerns and ranks them based on gender and race sensitivity, climate alarmism and equality. Something that seems appealing on the surface, but in reality hides numerous flaws and intentions. Take this. Tesla was rated by 3 different ESG watchdogs and all of them ended up with completely different ratings. For the same reason, tobacco companies like Philip Morris are getting a good ESG score. And Ogilvy, which is a $6 billion marketing company with over 14,000 employees, having the global head of diversity, equity and inclusion on top of the team page, which has nothing to do with the company itself. It turns out, if you want your ESG score to go up in order to keep your funding, you simply hire some dark-skinned and gay people and showcase them on your website next to your sustainability page. So it seems like ESG doesn't actually have the best interests in saving the planet. But why are all these companies so desperately complying with these measures? Well, that's the scary thing. A tremendous amount of money is directed towards this vague ESG policy, and companies are desperately trying to fulfill its requirements. Not because they're scared the planet is going extinct, but because they're scared they will lose funding. That's why we get these greenwashing campaigns filled with hypocrisy to kiss asset managers' asses. ESG is more like a collective circus businesses contribute to in order to worship big capital. In 2005, BP, British Petroleum, and their marketing agency Ogilvy invented the word we are all now familiar with, carbon footprint. Which in fact is ironic since BP is an oil giant. Anyhow, businesses and governments have gladly adopted this green climate disaster narrative all the way to 2023. So how has this fear-mongering affected us ever since? Well, for example, either you or your employer figured combustion cars are bad for the planet and you want to contribute to a higher ESG score. So you figure you should buy an electric vehicle because they're good for the planet as they're electric and supposedly clean. This is completely false. The batteries are a massive chemical waste, the cars are way heavier, and when they catch fire, it costs 23,000 liters of water to put it out. Just because electric vehicles do not directly emit any gases while driving, doesn't mean they're any cleaner than a regular combustion car. They have moved the issue to maintain a clean image without solving an actual problem. In fact, an electric vehicle in and of itself has double the footprint of a regular car's production. And we're not even measuring the charging stations, battery waste, and unethical resource accumulation. Another contributor to the green illusion is veganism. It's no secret that the food industry, including meat, is highly toxic and polluting the planet. Therefore, supermarkets are filled with 95% unhealthy foods containing microplastics and pesticides. Climate activists claim you should stop eating meat to save the planet and buy highly processed fake meat filled with estrogen-stimulating soy and many other chemicals. Neither the vegan or the meat diet from the supermarket is good for your health or the planet. I'm not going to advise you on any diets, but try getting your food from a local farmer. Also, Walmart advertises being green, but if you would take all the unhealthy foods out of the shelves, only 5% of the products would be left. Why is that a problem? Well, these companies can try and reduce their packaging with plastic and try to reduce their carbon emissions all they want. But the problem is inherently in the product, which in and of itself is just bad. Sugar and seed oils kill so many people and gives cancer, which then costs a lot of energy in the health industry. It's a perpetual cycle of poisoning ourselves and the planet, which we have built an ecosystem around to benefit from while sabotaging ourselves. We also know Coca-Cola isn't good for you, but they too claim to cut emissions and contribute to saving the planet by recycling. People don't realize what it costs to recycle. They don't know what it costs to make all of this new technology, and all of the unnecessary extra transportation doesn't make the planet any greener either. But McDonald's is very green. While going for a leak, the toilet tells you it saves 150,000 liters of water each year, not telling you it's poisoning the entire population with their highly processed foods, which also supports the highly polluting medical industry. The sustainability movement is an ecosystem in and of itself. It's all fake to make you feel good. If the product is inherently bad, there's nothing they can do to protect the planet. This also goes for people. Their lifestyles are inherently bad with unsustainable desires. The climate show that multinationals and governments put up is the biggest Trojan horse humanity has ever seen. Their intentions are not saving the planet. If McDonald's, Coca-Cola and Walmart really cared about the environment, they would have stopped their business. But they won't, because they don't actually care. And I don't blame them for it, because as long as you keep on buying their toxic crap, they will make a profit. The power is in your hands. So if cutting emissions, transferring to renewable energy and the entirety of ESG isn't going to change anything, why are we doing this? Asset managers like BlackRock, Vanguard and many others have allocated $66 trillion available for ESG-related investments. Asset managers control roughly 50% of the investable assets and therefore investment flows. That's why companies are afraid of companies like BlackRock and blindly obey any policy like ESG.
You have to force behaviors, and at BlackRock we are forcing behaviors. What we are doing internally is, if you don't achieve these levels of impact, your compensation could be impacted, okay? You have to force behaviors.
So if we direct so much money into ESG policies, we should have made a massive impact on the planet, right? Well, no. Only 1 out of 155 S&P 500 companies have actually reduced any emissions. The damage $66 trillion does in terms of putting people to work is way bigger than the regular business without ESG.
Green energy solutions are a business, and asset managers are heavily invested in them. But you can't sell your solar panels and your windmills without the narrative of a climate crisis. So what do? They tell the whole world that the planet is going to end because of you, so that you will comply with their ideas. Are you starting to see the bigger picture? Climate disasters and green narratives are not only used for marketing purposes, but they're also a great way to get the population exactly where they need to be, in a state of fear and guilt. Climate change and pandemics are vehicles for governments and multinationals to gain more power and control by deploying fear on the working poor people. By making them believe they are the reason the planet is going extinct, they will give all of their freedom away in a self-created crisis. And this isn't the first time we're lured into something which ended up in people having to give their rights away. COVID and World War II are pretty alike in that way.
And you might be thinking, if all of this is so obvious, why are there so many people cooperating? This must be a conspiracy, right? Well, guess what? You don't need a conspiracy when you have control over people who are blindly obeying your policy for money and are afraid to lose it. As for you, the consumer and activist, just because you feel like you're doing the right thing doesn't mean you are. The planet and wildlife doesn't really care about the feeling you have with your paper straw and reusable cup. Stop chasing fantasies. Climate change isn't scary. What is scary is blindly surrendering your way of life to the elites and governments and expecting they're going to fix Earth's temperature. Don't allow them to put you in a state of fear. It is abundantly clear that such a perspective is profoundly and deliberately ignorant. The climate will always be changing, regardless of your electric vehicle or your tofu. So instead of making a profit on useless and harmful green energy like solar and wind, it would be better to spend money on becoming more resilient to extreme weather conditions in countries that are more vulnerable. We all know that humans can pollute areas of this ball we collectively live on, but we need to be very careful with how we approach making people feel about it and who we point their fingers at. You'll be heavily confused by consuming media funded by the asset managers like BlackRock and Vanguard. So which media company should you avoid? Well, basically all mainstream media. BlackRock has literally invested in nearly every major media group there is.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
So how do we fix this? Well, all of this is a media problem. So the first step is to inform people with truth. As a media production and distribution company, we're looking for companies and creators that are perceptive enough to realize this and dare to take responsibility and help us change this misconception by promoting actual solutions for real problems.